I usually tell this story the same way I explained it to a coworker afterward, step by step. Like if I lay it out cleanly enough, it'll make sense. It was December 2018, rural Wyoming. I was a regional sales rep at the time, and I wasn't supposed to be on the road that late. 9 p.m. was the plan, 10 at the latest. But a client stretched a quick stop into something longer, and by the time I got back in the car, it was full dark and snowing. It wasn't a big storm. No warning alerts, just that dry, persistent snow that doesn't look dangerous until you realize how long it's been falling. Mileage was fine, gas was okay, weather was manageable. I'd driven winter roads plenty. I had decent tires, a scraper, heat that worked. I kept my speed down and gave myself room. I wasn't rushing. That's what still irritates me about how it happened. There was a drift that didn't look like anything special until my headlights caught it too late. The tires lost traction like they'd hit loose sand. The car slid sideways into the shoulder and stopped, like it had decided this was where it belonged. I tried rocking it out, reverse, drive, easy on the gas. Snow sprayed up and vanished back into the dark. The car didn't move. I grabbed my phone. No service. Not even a fake bar. I sat there a moment, staring at the screen like it might reconsider. Outside, the snow rushed past the headlights in sheets. The wipers squeaked as ice started to build. Everything beyond the beams felt erased. I ran through the mental checklist. Stay with the car. Run the heat in intervals. Don't let the tank drop too low. Someone will come by. I checked the rearview mirror. Nothing behind me. Just the narrow tunnel of light and blackness beyond it. Then I saw headlights far down the road. 2 small points, bobbing a little. Relief came without thinking. I flashed my brights twice. The headlights stayed visible for a second, then slid sideways and vanished into the snow like they'd taken a turn and I couldn't see. That was when the night started to feel bigger. I checked the fuel gauge. A little over a quarter tank. Enough, but not comfortable. The heater was working hard. I could almost feel the needle lowering. I made the decision that felt responsible. Run the engine for a bit, then shut it off. Conserve gas. The first time I turned the car off, the silence inside went from quiet to sealed. Like the car stopped being shelter and became a box. Snow tapped against the windshield. The engine ticked as it cooled. My breathing sounded too loud. I tried texting my brother even though I knew it wouldn't go through. It's not logical. It's just what you do when you want to feel less alone. The message didn't send. It just sat there. I was staring at it when I noticed movement near the passenger side window. Not a clear shape, just something passing through the edge of visibility, close to the glass. Darker than the snow behind it. I told myself it was a gust, a trick of the light. Snow does weird things to your eyes. I leaned forward, trying to see better, but the snow made everything grainy and distorted. Then the passenger door handle yanked. Hard. Not a tentative pull. Not a check. The whole door shook. I sat up so fast my seatbelt locked. My hand went to the steering wheel like it could anchor me. I didn't shout. I didn't move. I stared at the door, listening to my own breathing and the hiss of snow outside. My brain scrambled to catch up. Who would be out here? On foot? In this weather? I went for the ignition and fumbled it. The starter ground rough and ugly before the engine caught. The dashboard lit up. The headlights flooded the shoulder, turning the snow into a bright, chaotic blur. For half a second, I saw movement near the passenger side, low and close, stepping out of the light. Snow makes liars out of your eyes. Everything is half-formed. I threw the car into drive. The tires spun uselessly. I rocked it harder than before. Reverse, drive, reverse. The wheels caught, slipped, caught again. The car lurched forward and climbed onto the road. I hit the gas really hard and fishtailed. For a moment, I thought I'd trade being stuck for something worse. Then the tires grabbed. I didn't look in the mirrors. I kept my eyes forward and drove until I saw real lights, a gas station glowing in the dark like a checkpoint. I pulled in crooked and didn't care. I sat there with the engine running, hands shaking when I tried to open the door. I stood there, trying to give it a reasonable explanation. Maybe someone was trying to help. Maybe they thought I needed assistance. Then I remembered the way the handle had been yanked. That wasn't a "you okay" pull. Inside the station, nobody looked up. People drank coffee and talked about road conditions like it was normal. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I didn't know how to say it without sounding like I wasn't sure myself. I left as soon as my hands stopped shaking. I didn't stop again until I got home. And even now, the scariest part isn't that I got stuck in the snow. It's that someone found my car in a place where nobody should have been walking and tried the door like they expected it to open. I live in a duplex in Madison. Shared wall, shared driveway, shared everything you don't think about until something goes wrong. In winter, the place is never truly quiet. Wind presses against the siding, the heat clicks on and off, pipes shift and knock like the house is adjusting itself. I can tell you the exact second I made the wrong choice. Not when I opened the door, not even when I heard him. It was earlier. Standing in my hallway with my hand on the lock, already halfway through that quiet argument where you convince yourself your instincts are exaggerating. You're being dramatic. It's a blizzard. People need help. You're not going to leave someone out there. That night in February 2020, a blizzard had been working over the city since late afternoon. The kind that makes everything look softer and emptier at the same time. I'd been inside all evening. No errands, no plans. Just my laptop open at the kitchen table, a stack of notes, and a cup of tea that had gone cold half an hour ago. Grad school shrinks your world. Everything becomes deadlines and paragraphs that don't feel real until you submit them. I was deep in that headspace when the knock pulled me out of it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. I stared at the door, waiting for the sound to turn into something normal. A neighbor, a delivery mistake, anything that made sense. Then a man's voice came through the door. "Hey, sorry, I'm freezing. Can I just warm up for a second?" The tone was calm and polite, almost embarrassed. The kind of voice you'd expect from someone asking for directions. I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and checked the peephole. The porch light was on, but the snow was blowing sideways, blurring everything. I could make out a hooded shape close to the door, too close to see details. "Please," he said again. "My phone died. I'm not from around here. I just need a minute." My brain started building explanations faster than it was asking questions. Maybe his car slid off the road. Maybe he got turned around. Maybe this was exactly the situation people talk about when they say, "be kind." Then the quieter part of my brain cut in. If his car died, where is it? Why my door? Why not the main road? I looked toward the window by the sink that looks out over the driveway. Snow had piled against the steps. Beyond that, the street was just white. No headlights, no idling engine. I checked the peephole again. He hadn't stepped back. If anything, he was closer, like he'd leaned in to listen. I should have stopped there. Instead, I did the thing that still makes me angry at myself. I cracked the door just a few inches and relatched the chain, telling myself that was a smart compromise. Cold air shoved its way inside. So did the sound of the storm. I could smell him too, wet clothes, and I could see how close he really was, right at the threshold. He started talking the instant the door opened, like he'd been waiting for the cue. Thank you, I'm sorry. My phone died and I just need to warm up for a second and maybe charge it and I'll go. I swear." Words stacked quickly, one on top of the other. Gratitude with pressure underneath it. I kept my hand on the door and my foot braced behind it. I said, "I can call someone for you. I can call the police." He looked over my shoulder into the house, scanning the place real fast. No, it's fine," he said immediately. "I don't want to make a big deal. I just need to step in for a second." Except he wasn't acting like someone desperate for warmth. His shoulders weren't hunched, and something about his breath bothered me. It wasn't as visible as I expected for someone claiming they were freezing. I looked down toward the porch without thinking. The snow on the steps was uneven but mostly smooth. The footprints didn't line up with the walkway. They angled in from the side of the yard near the fence where it's darker. That was when my instincts stopped being vague. This man hadn't come the normal way. I started to close the door. "I'm sorry," I said. "I can't let you in." His expression changed. His foot shot forward and wedged into the gap. The pressure was immediate, hard. The chain snapped tight, and the door lurched in my hand. The frame made a cracking sound. He pushed again. I shoved back with my shoulder, planting my foot on the floor. My thoughts collapsed into action. "Get your foot out," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. He didn't yell. That scared me more than yelling would have. He made a strained sound and kept pushing. I yelled toward the shared wall, not even sure my neighbor was home. "Hey, call the police. He's trying to get in." The door flexed again. The crack in the frame widened, like something giving up. I kicked at the bottom of the door and the angle shifted just enough for his foot to slip free. I slammed the door shut with everything I had. Deadbolt. Handle lock. I stood there leaning against the door, trying to listen. Just silence. Not the kind that means someone ran away. The kind that makes you wonder if they're still standing there, listening. I backed away slowly and grabbed my phone. When I called 911, I kept my voice low. Not because I was calm, but because the idea of him hearing exactly what I was doing felt wrong. The police didn't arrive quickly. Roads were bad. It made sense. Waiting didn't. When they finally showed up, they examined the door and the chain and the crack in the frame. They walked the yard with flashlights and found nothing. Snow had already softened everything. They used phrases like attempted entry and probably opportunistic. They told me I'd done the right thing. The crack was thin, but undeniable. A mark where something I trusted had almost failed. He didn't need a weapon. He just needed me to hesitate, to worry about being rude, to doubt myself for a few inches. After that, I stopped opening the door at night, even when the voice sounds normal, even when it sounds polite. Because I learned something that winter I still don't like admitting. Sometimes danger doesn't break in. Sometimes it waits for you to unlock it. I was standing at my kitchen window, watching the snow do what it always does, erase the edges of everything. The porch light was on, but the storm was already swallowing it. The beam barely reached the steps anymore. Beyond that, the yard was just white movement. I looked down and noticed footprints. They weren't on the walkway or the shoveled path. They cut straight across the yard, through the part nobody uses in winter. The narrow strip between my fence and my neighbor's detached garage. The problem was, I'd been inside for hours. I'd finished my last work call around 6, eaten leftovers, and watched something on TV while answering emails. Snow usually makes everything feel calmer. It softens sound. It smooths the world out. But those footprints didn't look accidental. Whoever made them wasn't slipping or wandering. But I did what everybody does in these situations and ran through excuses in my head. I told myself it was probably a neighbor cutting through, or kids being dumb, or someone lost and trying to find the street. People do weird things when it snows. Then I noticed something else. The prints didn't lead to my door. They were toward the side of my house, toward the gate. The gate is old and obvious, nothing hidden about it, but you don't use it unless you mean to be on that side of the house. I set my mug down and checked my front door lock, even though I knew it was locked. Then I checked it again. Living alone does that to you. There's no one else to sanity check the moment. No one to say you're overthinking this. In Duluth, you learn your winter rules early. Shovel before ice sets in. Salt the steps. Keep your phone charged. Handle problems sooner rather than later, because snow has a way of turning small issues into big ones overnight. That's the logic I used when I grabbed my boots. Better to check now. Better to see where the prints came from. Snow would erase everything by morning, and I didn't want to spend the next day wondering. I pulled on my coat, shoved my feet into boots, and grabbed the flashlight by the door. Outside, the porch light created a small island of visibility, and everything beyond it blurred into white movement and shadow. I aimed the flashlight down at the footprints. Up close, they looked recent. The edges hadn't softened yet. Snow was still dusting the bottoms like it hadn't had time to settle. I followed them carefully, avoiding stepping into them like that still mattered. They led toward the side of the house and then stopped. No continuation, no turn back, just an ending right near the gate, like the person had vanished. I stood there waiting for the explanation to appear. Maybe the wind filled the rest in, maybe they doubled back in their own tracks. But when I swept the flashlight around, I didn't see a return trail, no overlap, no mess. I turned the light toward the fence line, the neighbor's garage, the tree line at the back of the yard. Nothing but snow. Then I heard a crunch with weight behind it. It came from my left, just outside the porch light's reach. I turned fast, flashlight swinging. Nothing. Another crunch followed. It felt closer now. Snow messes with sound. Distance collapses. Things feel nearer than they should. I took a step back and swept the beam wider toward the darker corner of the yard. That's when a second flashlight cut through the snow. The beam didn't wave around like someone searching. It moved in a smooth arc, like the person already knew where to look. It passed over the fence, the side of my house, the spot where I'd been standing seconds earlier. I never saw a face, not even a full body, just the beam moving through snowfall. Then boots crunched again, close enough that I could hear the compression of snow under tread. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. I wasn't out there investigating, I was exposed. I backed up quickly and nearly lost my footing on the shoveled path. My flashlight jumped, catching random pieces of the yard in jittery flashes. I didn't yell. I didn't call out. I moved. The front steps felt too far away, even though they were right there. I grabbed the door handle and my gloves slipped. Tried again, harder, and pulled the door open just wide enough to wedge myself inside. I slammed the door shut, locked it, then locked the deadbolt, and stood there with my back pressed against it, listening. Nothing. No retreating footsteps. No voice. Just the storm filling space again. When I finally looked back out the window, my own boot prints had joined the others, messy, overlapping, destroying whatever clean line had been there before. By morning, it didn't matter. The snow wiped everything clean. Yard, path, evidence. After that, I made changes. Nothing overdramatic. I didn't move. I didn't arm myself. I added a second deadbolt, installed a camera pointed at the side yard and gate. I stopped going outside at night to check things unless I had a reason I could explain out loud, and I stopped standing at the window during storms. The first time I heard it, I stopped mid-mop. Something metal banged behind the store. It wasn't the kind of rattle you get from wind or a loose sign. This sounded like impact, like something solid hit something else. I remember thinking, please be a cart, please be a pallet, please be anything that doesn't involve a person. It was March 2021 in Spokane, and winter still had its grip on everything. Dirty snowbanks lined the parking lot, piled up like walls. I was 22, working nights at a grocery store while taking community college classes during the day. It was just a regular place with too many rules and not enough people on staff. Closing routine never changed. Mop, trash, bathrooms, count the drawer, lock the cigarette cabinet, walk the store with a clipboard like I was somehow responsible for the whole building. Brian, the manager, always left right after the last customer. He'd wave, say, "You're good," and that was it. I was always the last employee there. That night, the parking lot was nearly empty. A couple of cars near the pharmacy side. Snow made everything look closer, flatter and quieter. I was winding up the mop when I heard the sound again. Same spot, behind the store. The loading area was back there. Dumpsters, delivery door, a narrow lane where trucks pulled in. There was a blind corner too, where the building turned and cut off your view. I thought it was probably nothing. A pallet shifting, a loose lid, something settling. Then the sound came again, right after I stopped moving. I stood still, listening. Nothing. I took a step toward the back hallway. Nothing. I turned away, thinking I'd just finish the checklist and leave. Clank. Behind the store. I stared at the back hallway door. My phone was in my apron pocket. I pulled it out, 1% battery. Of course, I plugged it in behind the counter, grabbed my keys, and convinced myself I'd just check the door and come right back. That's how it always happens. You sell yourself a smaller version of a bad idea. The stockroom lights were half off to save electricity. Boxes stacked everywhere, and empty pallet jacks. At the back door, I looked through the small window first. Just snow. Security light. No movement. That's where I should have backed off. Instead, I cracked the door and leaned out. Then, I stepped outside. The dumpsters sat dark and massive, lids iced over. The far corner, where the building bent, was just shadow. I held my key ring like it could protect me. My phone flashlight barely lit anything past a few feet. I walked a couple steps forward. "Hello?" I called, already wishing I hadn't. Then I saw movement. A shadow sliding behind the dumpsters, gone the second my light touched it. I didn't chase it. My brain snapped straight to get back inside. I turned and heard a footstep in the snow behind me. Close. Right there. I moved faster. Then something metal cut through the air. It hit the wall near the door with a spark, then dropped into the snow. A piece of pipe. Footsteps rushed toward me now. I ran. I slammed into the door, yanked the handle. It stuck for half a second. Cold makes everything stiff. My keys dug into my palm as I fought the lock. I got inside and slammed the door shut. The deadbolt slid into place, and then the handle rattled hard. Then nothing. No footsteps leaving. Just breathing. Close to the door, like someone leaned in and listened. I backed away, grabbed the store phone, and called 911. Police arrived quickly. They checked the loading area, the fence, the dumpsters, the corner. They found the pipe. They didn't find a person. Snow was already falling heavier, softening everything, wiping away footprints. One officer shrugged and said it might have been kids. Kids. At 2 a.m, behind a closed store, throwing metal. The next day, Brian called and asked if I was okay. When I asked about not closing alone anymore, he sighed and said, "That's just how nights are staffed." I worked 2 more weeks. Every sound in the stockroom felt loaded. Every checklist step near the back hallway felt like a risk. I quit after almost dropping a basket of returns when a cart squeaked by itself. People always focus on the pipe, the footsteps, the door, but that's not what stays with me. What stays with me is how easy it was. One person, one blind spot, one employee trained to handle it. The store wasn't the trap, the policy was. It was late September in Austin, still hot even after dark. I'd been on campus all day, then worked a short shift, and by the time I got home, I was running on fumes. My apartment complex was quiet, nothing unusual for that hour. Bright hallway lights, beige walls, the smell of carpet cleaner that never quite goes away. I was walking down the 3rd floor hallway when I heard someone behind me say, "Hey, sorry, can I ask you something?" That didn't feel threatening at all. I turned, already loosening my backpack strap, ready to answer quickly and move on. He looked normal. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. T-shirt, shorts, flip-flops. Nothing about him screamed danger. He had that practiced half-smile people use when they're trying to seem approachable. "Do you live up here?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Oh, cool. I just moved in, trying to figure out if the Wi-Fi here is always this bad." I laughed because it was easy and familiar. "Yeah, it kind of is." He stepped a little closer than necessary. I turned toward my door, signaling that the conversation was ending. He adjusted with me. "So what do you do?" he asked. "I'm in school. Communications." "Oh, nice," he said. Like social media stuff? Sort of. And he kept going. Do you live alone? The question didn't belong with the rest of the conversation. I smiled anyway. I have roommates. It wasn't true, but lying felt easier than explaining why the question bothered me. Oh, so you're not here by yourself much, he said. I didn't answer. I shifted my keys in my hand and turned slightly toward my lock. Well, I should get inside, I said. Early morning. He didn't move. Instead, he leaned just enough to see past me toward my door. What time do you usually leave? The hallway suddenly felt narrower. I realized then that I couldn't unlock my door without turning my back on him. My keys felt useless in my hand. I stood there, frozen in indecision, still trying to be polite instead of decisive. Have a good night, I said, forcing a small laugh. He didn't laugh back. Wait, he said, and reached out. His hand closed around my arm, just enough pressure to test what I'd tolerate. I pulled back instinctively. He tightened his grip slightly. You seem cool, he said. I've just been trying to meet people. My throat went dry. I looked down the hall, hoping someone would open a door. Anyone. I tried to speak, but my voice came out thin. I really need to go. He stepped closer, and his grip didn't change. That's when the stairwell door opened. It was just a click and a heavy swing. A guy I'd seen around, older, carrying groceries, walked into the hallway. The stranger released my arm instantly. His face shifted in a blink. Friendly, relaxed, normal. Hey, he said to the man passing by. The man nodded and kept walking. The stranger turned back to me, smiling. Nice meeting you. Then he walked away, unhurried, disappearing down the hall. I stood there, my body not caught up with what just happened. Then I jammed my key into the lock, scratched the paint, shoved the door open, and locked it behind me. Afterward, nothing happened. No chase, no police, no dramatic ending. Just a moment in a hallway that replayed in my head over and over. I sat on my couch and did the thing I hate admitting. I minimized it. Maybe he was just awkward. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I overreacted. But when I looked at the faint mark on my arm, I felt sick because I knew what I'd felt in that moment. He wasn't confused. He wasn't socially clueless. He was testing. He wanted to see how much space he could take without resistance. After that night, I changed small things. I waited in my car if someone lingered near the stairs. I pretended to be on the phone in hallways. I stopped smiling by default, and I stopped worrying about being rude. Because I learned something that night, something I wish I'd learned sooner. Not wanting to be rude is exactly what some people rely on. If this video made you rethink just checking real quick, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next nightmare, and let me know which story got under your skin. And if you still believe nature is peaceful once you're far enough from people, click now to watch 4 really disturbing hiking stories. Turns out, isolation doesn't make you safe. It makes you available. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.